Welcome to EPG Pathshala. My name is Mohan Ramanan. I am a retired professor of the University of Hyderabad. The lesson for this unit is William Blake's reading The Tyger. It has been written by Ghana J., who is an assistant professor, the Department of English, Christ University, Bengaluru. In this module, we should survey the life and select works of one of the most significant romantic writers, William Blake. We shall begin with an introduction to the life of Blake and follow it up with an analysis and critical appreciation of one of his most anthologized and most famous poems called The Tyger. Both stylistic as well as thematic analysis of the poem will be done after this, and The Lamb, another poem by William Blake, will be seen alongside The Tyger for a kind of brief comparative analysis. Our first section, students, will be on the life and times of William Blake. We'll do an overview of it. Poet, artist, engraver, William Blake is one of the most important personalities of the Romantic period. Born in London on 28 November 1757, Blake came to be known as a great artist and poet of his times. His artistic abilities were evident even when he was a child, and when he enrolled himself in a drawing school and learned to draw sketches of human figures by copying outlines from the plaster casts of ancient sculptures. Blake is today known not only as a poet but also as an illustrator and engraver. He was an avid reader of the Bible and the Greek classics. Shakespeare and Milton were also part of his reading and influenced his artistic career greatly. Since his parents could not afford his artistic training for long, Blake sought an apprenticeship under engraver James Basire. He sketched Westminster Abbey several times, and these sketches were instrumental in making him fascinated with the idea of the Gothic. Blake was accepted to the Royal Academy of Arts, where he learnt and exhibited several of his works. Following this, he was employed as a professional engraver, working for Joseph Johnson, a procurer of subversive literature. Blake also associated himself with some of the significant thinkers of his period, people like Mary Wollstonecraft, Thomas Paine, William Godwin, Reverend Anthony, Harriet Matthew, among others. Harriet Matthew and draftsman John Flaxman were instrumental in funding the publication of Blake's first book of poetry, Poetical Sketches, which was published in 1783. His works were both religious and secular, with one symbiotically related to the other. In 1784, Blake established himself with a printing press, which enabled him to publish his own works. Blake is credited with developing the technique called illuminated printing. He made copper plates engraved with his own illustrations as well as his works, and he prepared his own ink with which he printed the poems on paper. Every illustration would then be later colored by hand. Through this process, Blake was able to produce works that were often commissioned, and from 1789 onwards, several significant works were developed, including the famous The Songs of Innocence and the Songs of Experience. Blake's works are replete with spiritual concerns. More often, these concerns are coupled with political ideas. The political climate of the age was highly influential in turning Blake's works into the most radical kind of work of the period. Visions had been a part of his formative years, and they were instrumental in his writings till his death. Blake claimed to have seen angels. On another occasion, he said to have sighted the spirit of his brother Robert rise from the dead body at the time of his death. By the end of the 18th century, almost all of his works became biblical in nature, and mysticism and divine mystery began to pervade most of his works. Blake also created some of his best-known works, including Milton, Jerusalem, and illustrated Dante's Divine Comedy. A childless couple, Blake and his wife Catherine Boucher, tried to alleviate their poverty through exhibition of his works in 1809. But the event was not well attended and marked the nearing end of his artistic career. Blake died in 1827 at the age of 69. Now, let us turn to one of his most celebrated poems, The Tyger. It's a poem of 24 lines with 14 questions in it. It deals with the idea of creation, both the jungle cat as well as the work of art. Its 6 quatrains are made of rhyming couplets. We'll now read the poem. Tyger, Tyger, burning bright, in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps and skies burned the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize this fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain, in what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dead grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tyger, Tyger, burning bright, in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? Now read the poem silently and try and understand the divine and grand images which are embodied within it. We shall come back and look at them more closely a little later. Right now, we shall do an analysis which is thematic and structural of the poem. If you observe closely, the poem opens and closes with the same set of lines. It invokes the fierce power of not just the fearsome tiger, but also the one who created the being. The only difference between the two stanzas is that the question in the stanzas considerably differ from one another. The first stanza ends with the line, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? And the last stanza with the lines, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry, with the dare being the differential. The tiger, we are told by the speaker, is not just any animal, but one that is burning bright. This draws our attention to the majestic creature that the tiger really is. The tiger is known for its bright and fiery fur that adds to its majesty. This burning bright may also be read as referring to the intense power that the tiger has. A lonesome creature, it walks the forests of the night fearlessly. The speaker is awestruck by its beauty, its immense strength, immediately wondering in awe again, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? This question becomes the central concern of the entire poem. The creator and his creation. Invoking the hand and eye in these lines also makes the idea of the hand and sight of the creator involved in the creation of such a majestic creature like the tiger. Fearful symmetry, by the way, is another interesting image. Art is generally characterized by aesthetic beauty owing to its symmetry. By drawing attention to a fearful symmetry, the speaker emphasizes how its beauty is combined with its ability to wreak havoc as a predator on its prey. The sublime nature of the tiger, its appearance of beauty and fear, is at once characteristic of this creation. The second stanza asks the question of where the tiger was created. The following stanza exhibits the powerful creature that the tiger is. This is done by invoking powerful images of fire. The speaker wonders in which space of depth was the fire in the tiger's eyes conceived. Don't the lines, "In what distant deeps or skies burned the fire of thine eyes," bring to our mind the space of a blacksmith, molding and shaping the creation in the midst of fire and heavy tools? The tools appear in the images of hammer and chain in stanza 3. If the creation is awe-inspiring and fierce and mighty, wonders the speaker, what then of the Creator himself? Obviously for Blake, a creature like the tiger was not created in this world, but in distant deeps or skies, referring to both hell as well as heaven, respectively. One of the conventional readings of the tiger has been that it symbolizes Lucifer, the fallen angel. This is also emphasized by the reference to the wings in the line, "On what wings dare he aspire?" The recurrent invocation of fire images emphasizes how Blake is drawing a picture of hell, invoked also by the image "forests of the night." Harold Bloom remarks, "Like Lucifer, the tiger works alone and inspires thoughts of death. It is also strong and beautiful, as the Bible portrays the fallen angel." One of the fundamental questions that seizes Blake's imagination in this poem is not just the creation, but also the sublimity of the Creator. By beginning to wonder about the Creator, the speaker now asks, if the tiger of such brute force has been created, what about the strength of the Creator himself? This is evident in the lines, "And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet?" We are then taken to the workplace of a blacksmith, hard at his artwork. In this stanza, the questions are much shorter and gain more pace. More questions begin to be asked. The speaker turns to the creation again and wonders what would happen to the ones held by the tiger's deadly clasp. The brute strength of the tiger is so immense that the speaker observes how even the stars give up their move to dominate the skies. The speaker then wonders what the Creator himself must have thought about this creation. Was he happy to see the tiger? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Wonders the speaker. Is the tiger then the opposite of the gentle-eyed lamb? We must note here that Lamb is a poem in the Songs of Innocence collection, and we'll be talking about it later. The naivety of the lamb is contrasted by the growing power of the tiger. Blake wishes the readers to see this Creator's hand in each creation and closes the poem with the opening lines. One way to begin thinking about Blake's tiger is to ask the question, how does the tiger assert itself in its environment? In fact, what is its environment in the first place? By not providing a concrete setting, but merely referring to a dark forest and a deep sky, Blake has been able to keep the setting and its themes nebulous and mysterious. The tiger is an elusive creature, and keeping with the spirit, the reader is not given a concrete setting to locate the tiger. Very often this poem is seen in contrast to the poem from the Songs of Innocence collection called The Lamb. Let us now look at Blake's The Lamb, and here is how the poem reads. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Gave thee life and bid thee feed by the stream and over the mead, gave thee clothing of delight, softest clothing, woolly bright, gave thee such a tender voice, making all the vales rejoice. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Little lamb, I'll tell thee. Little lamb, I'll tell thee. He is called by thy name, for he calls himself a lamb. He is meek and he is mild. He became a little child, I a child and thou a lamb. We are all called by his name. Little lamb, God bless thee. Little lamb, God bless thee. How beautiful the poem is. But now we shall do a little comparative analysis of the tiger, which has all the fierce images, and the lamb, which has all the soft images. Like the tiger, the lamb also appears in Blake's Songs of Innocence and begins with a question about its creation. The speaker asks how the lamb was created, how it is a gentle and meek creature, which implies that its creator must also be gentle and loving too, unlike the tiger, where the fearful symmetry implies a fearful creator. Consider this in the light of what we have discussed with regard to the tiger. Blake wonders that if the tiger is ferocious and sublime, its creator must be powerful and sublime too. For Blake, innocence and experience complement each other, and one state must not be seen as being better than the other state. While Blake refers to the tiger's appearance as burning bright, referring to its fiery coat, Blake speaks of the lamb's appearance as clothing of delight, softest clothing, woolly bright. Both the poems, when seen alongside each other, clearly show how there are no clear divisions between the good and the bad, between danger and security. The opposites are reconciled in Blake's poetry. That the lamb is also a Christian symbol of Christ as Lamb of God cannot be missed here. Blake remarks how Christ himself was mild and meek. The poem underscores the Christ-like values of gentleness and meekness. When seen in opposition to the lamb, the tiger does not follow the flock. On the other hand, the tiger, we know, is an animal that learns from experience. As a single, autonomous ruler of its environs, the tiger gains its power from the knowledge gained through experience. There are a few points which you can ponder. The Tiger and the Lamb are two most often anthologized poems of Blake. Think about why these two poems continue to hold the interest of the reading public even today. Blake was writing at a time when the European colonial project was underway, and Britain had conquered India decisively by that time. The Tiger, published in 1794, at a time when Tipu Sultan, the Tiger of Mysore, put up a strong resistance to the British forces in India. Read this poem, perhaps in the light of this colonial fact. And finally, read other romantic poets and attempt an understanding of the difference in the romantic thought espoused in Blake's poetry in comparison with other romantic poets. Did you know, for example, that Blake was viewed as a madman in his times? He is now heralded for his immense contributions to romantic poetry and his visionary intensity. Did you know that Blake's wife was illiterate? He taught her to read and write so that she could help him to draft and publish his works. Blake was self-taught in Greek, Latin, and Hebrew, and that is why much of his poetry is so highly allusive. Blake wrote his texts in reverse on the copper plates and then illustrated them. And finally, Blake helped Thomas Paine escape to France when his Rights of Man was deemed too inflammatory in the revolutionary climate in England at the time, influenced as it was by the French Revolution. So in this module, we have looked at the life and times of William Blake, given an overview of his life and his career, talked about his biography a little, and the times in which he was living, particularly the fact that he is a premier romantic poet, talked about some of his contemporaries and some of the friends whom Blake mixed with, and we talked about his style of writing. After that, we took up the Tiger, which is one of the most important poems in the Blake canon, much anthologized. We read it aloud. Then I encouraged you to think about it silently, and then to think in terms of the structural and thematic concerns of the poem. We read it closely again. We understood the stanzaic divisions and transitions, the significant themes, motives, and symbols in the poem. And then we read The Lamb, another poem which can be seen as a kind of a parallel poem to The Tiger. We read the text of that poem, and we did a comparative analysis of The Tiger and The Lamb and the recurring ideas and contrasting themes in these two poems. Then we spoke about a few points which you might like to think about, and also asked you to find out whether you knew some of the interesting tidbits in connection with Blake's life.